So what do you think was the response to this article and Jason's change of the lyrics? Any guesses?
Don't do it.
Oops.
Yeah. Nice. So I heard "don't do it" and "oops" were the two I heard loudest. The editors of the UU World magazine prefaced the section of selected letters in response to the article with this statement. Many readers felt the shift away from standing, part of the phrase first uttered by then UUA President William Sinkford in 2004, is overly sensitive. The phrase became a slogan for the UU faith and is best known for. It's used to promote marriage equality and to resist immigration laws and practices most Universalists find unjust. It is emblazoned on T-shirts and banners. Just so you know, I did used to have a Standing on the Side of Love, and Janice Sankot bought me the updated one, which is Side with Love. So what followed were these comments by individuals. Karen Schlock on Facebook said, as someone with invisible disabilities, I must comment. To stand for a principle is very different than standing physically. Standing for the principle of love for all, equal rights for all, and recognition of the worth and dignity of all is different than answering the call, which to me is just wishy-washy in comparison. Marty P. Kelman wrote on Facebook, standing on the side of love does not require physical dexterity. It takes mental and emotional commitment. Arias Sublet joined the Facebook discussion to express support for those who said how standing excluded them. They said it takes courage for people to make themselves vulnerable and to share when they are hurt. Can we at least sit with that discomfort instead of trying to minimize their feelings? The UUworld.org commentator using the name, I can't even say because it's like BLDR Janet from Boulder, posted that she struggled with the change but is working to support it. I feel a sense of loss, she said. But I do recall how excluded I felt when man was justified to include all humans. Without much work, I can imagine how these words sting, like those words used to sting me. After receiving so many reactions to the changed lyrics, Shelton responded at length on UUworld.org, and he expressed his dismay at the negative reactions to the change. Here are some of his words. Though the song's original intent had nothing to do with accessibility, its impact has become a painful reminder of the ways that ableism has diminished our capacity to witness together. I felt it a matter of conscience to act in a way that was responsive to the pain that had become associated with my song. I can't change the t-shirts, but I can do this. In the end, answering the call of love is a better metaphor. It's about responding what love calls us to do. So did you hear those familiar words in Sheldon's response? Intent, impact, conscience, responding, ouch, oops, all of them. As I thought about today and what I would share, I felt myself sort of teetering on the pastoral side of things, wanting to say, I know you're tired, or I know how hard it is in this world to navigate right now, especially with social media and such divisive politics. And then on the other side, I was thinking, keep your hearts open and do the hard and holy things that recognize each other's humanity. Or just how inconvenient or hard is it for you to pay attention and respond with words that show that you care enough to adjust your vocabulary or your actions? The truth is, we do live in a world where we are oversaturated, especially online, with interconnectedness. If you follow or subscribe to emails from organizations that are working for more equity, equality, or inclusion, you probably get a lot coming in. Or if you follow truth tellers or prophetic people from marginalized communities online, you hear a lot of opinions and feelings. And the truth is that those of us who are privileged, and we are all privileged in some of our identities, are called to find a way to create a world based on love and care for each other. Theologian Rebecca Parker in The House of Hope, which talks about different aspects of the Unitarian Universalist faith, writes about how progressive faith prioritizes relationality. Relationality, how we are with one another, is essential to human existence. We are social beings, and how we are with one another matters. Parker says, early 20th century liberal theology emphasized the social character of human existence. Belief in the brotherhood of man, to use their term, affirmed that all people are members of one family of humanity. Obligations to love and care for one another are implicit in life, not add-ons. We are bound together in the inescapable network of mutuality. We know those words from Martin Luther King in advocating for racial justice and economic justice. What injures one diminishes all. We know this, honestly. We know this in our hearts, although it's really hard to make that heart stuff make it into our heads. Impact, when words or actions result in others feeling harmed or causing injury, we know what that looks like. And what injures one diminishes all. I do want to be upfront about this battle in myself when it comes to language and inclusion, especially when it's ableist language. I know it's not easy to remove words like see, hear, walk from one's vocabulary, and personally, I try to find alternative words when I can, and sometimes I am tired and I am lazy and I just don't do it. Part of it is to challenge myself not to lean on words that might cause harm and to find more inclusive language. All of us were sort of raised with words that needed changing. There's words in society that progressive people of faith have long retired. I'm not going to say them all up here. Words that you may have grown up with and heard in your households of origins. Words that you may have even used many years ago or even more recently, but that we know are egregious. We know that they are now seen as slurs about people that are easy to leave behind for some. But the words that we are pointing to and that I'm asking you to consider today may be less evident in terms of being offensive, more subtle perhaps, at least to those of us who are outside of whatever identity is experiencing harm. Those of you who identify as women, just like in that article said, or in that letter said, you know how exhausting it is to have to keep translating he language so that you feel like you're included in statements. Those of us who are queer, we know how important language is, and we know that the words that people use demonstrate an awareness of our existence and their desire to be inclusive. The list could go on. Love, I believe, needs to be at the center of our willingness to pay attention, to listen deeply, to consider our own words and actions, and to change them when we understand they are harmful. Did you hear that sequence of verbs? I'll say it again. Love, I believe, needs to be at the center of our willingness to pay attention, to listen deeply, to consider our words and actions, and to change them when we understand they are harmful. If we're not paying attention, we can't know the world around us. Paying attention requires that we turn outward. It requires an openness, a curiosity. Listening can be from having an actual conversation, but it can also be from listening to people's experiences through reading, watching videos, watching movies, listening to podcasts, listening to the radio. Listening is about hearing other people's stories. I remember at the aftermath of George Floyd's murder when we were hearing from our friends of color that white folks needed to educate themselves and not count on those who are experiencing trauma and exhaustion of ongoing racism to be our teachers. So I really encourage you to learn, not necessarily by the person who you're trying to kind of include more, but by learning, by bringing yourself up to speed. There's always ways to do so now. I think that invitation to expand, that's how we will find ways to create invitations, to expand sort of how we are saying welcome to people here. I think as you come to understand the lived experiences of others, there's an obligation to lean into relationship. In order to do that, we do have to reflect on our own actions, to really consider our actions and words, and to examine if how we are showing up in the world aligns with our values. So here at Michael Servetus, we hold up these values: mindful interdependence, authentic curiosity, courageous love. Those are tall orders. All of those values are companions in this journey of understanding and change. Rebecca Parker, reflecting on that kind of love of Unitarian Universalist, answering the call of, says, apparently love, as I and many religious progressives understand it, is dangerous. We advocate for a love that surprises, that disrupts, that alters the status quo, that expresses itself in diverse ways, that comes in rainbow colors. Those who want to preserve the existing social and economic order invest in prohibiting such love. We know this to be true. I love that language of love that surprises, disrupts, and alters the status quo. You know we come from theological and religious heritage of heretics, those who disrupted the status quo of the religious landscape, those who spoke a different truth, and who, through time, practiced the kind of love we strive to live into today. That article by Jason Shelton, changing the name of the song, was titled A Gesture of Love. Reverend Teresa Soto, an outspoken advocate for radical welcome and Unitarian Universalism, wrote a chapter in a book called Beyond Welcome. She understands how people in the dominant culture often argue that it is impossible to honor all identities. I believe that behind that thought or argument that it's impossible to honor all identities is a sense that making these changes in language and actions is hard and uncomfortable. I could go so far as saying people are often frustrated at the inconvenience. I say that because I have had those feelings myself at times. But I know that when we touch on what we really care about and how we really want to live in the world, we are called to honor as many people as we can at all times. Soto says, some people may argue that noticing and caring about people who are different from the dominant culture is basing just too much on identity. But she says not doing so is also a choice. It's not a matter of dogma. Doing so is a choice, and we should choose to care about people because people matter. And our Universalist traditions, together with our generosity of spirit, make clear to us that when we say everyone matters, we don't mean only the people we already know and understand. I think of this congregation. Several years ago, we held an extensive class on trans inclusion in congregations, followed by a lovely conversation with Kari, who's a transgender congregant who graciously offered her time. At one point in that conversation, someone asked Kari, what can we do to show our support and love? And Kari said, identifying your pronouns is just one simple way. After that conversation, more and more people were putting pronouns on their name tags and pronouns next to their names in that little box on Zoom. Following Katie rewriting a little script the other week, she added her pronouns, and so now I am introducing myself with pronouns, and we do so in circles following the service and at other times. This simple act demonstrates an awareness and a care for people who are queer and trans. We sold our building because of a lack of accessibility. We knew that in order to be the congregation that is consistent with our values and wants to be radically welcome, we need a space that allows people to enter with ease, a place without stairs and where bathrooms are actually built for accessibility. That was a tremendous leap of faith, a radical move based on deeply held values and love for both of those who are with us and those we hope will join us. Rebecca Parker, speaking about Unitarian Universalism, using a metaphor of home, says there needs to be a home built on understanding that all life is interdependent, whose foundation is faithful care, whose threshold is open-hearted welcome, whose kitchen serves those in needs, where love can lie down in peace and joy. This kind of love provides us the nourishment we need to resist excessive injustices and to instigate more justice. If we create a home for such love, it will indeed be a habitation that will offer hope for the world. So yesterday, I held a new member class. We will introduce new members in an upcoming service. They were very curious about our potential name change and about the building. We together have made some grand gestures towards being inclusive and welcoming. This time, we as a congregation are in this time of listening and paying attention, of self-examination, of using our values and our mission as to guide us. What we have chosen to do now by meeting here and considering a name change has been super disorienting for a lot of us and caused grief for many of us. But it's also been a time of opening, expanding, risking what is comfortable for some, whether that is the comfort and familiarity of our old building or the attachment to our name, and allowing ourselves to think beyond ourselves and create an invitation and welcome that's more accessible and that creates a wider embrace for all who are with us and may join us. We have a long way to go. Actually, we will never really get there. We're not going to arrive anywhere since the world around us is constantly changing and challenging us to change with it. So instead of imagining some destination, we can simply imagine traveling together, journeying throughout this world and our faith and our congregation as making gestures of love whenever possible. A few colleagues and I were discussing Unitarian Universalism the other day. They were discouraged by the pushback we're experiencing that I had mentioned earlier when I was talking about committees, that folks are sort of trying to deny the multicultural world that we are part of. They were also talking about the challenge of people who view themselves as religious liberals but get up in arms when discomfort comes from white supremacy being focused on or anti-racism coming into congregations and into their lives. One of the ministers lamented about our lack of humility as Unitarian Universalists, that we are people who shut down due to wanting to only believe our own truth. And another said, I think we've forgotten our capacity to say yes. We need to say yes more often. We need to recognize that there is something larger at work. I want to say yes, I can tell you that, and I hope you do as well. We will inevitably make mistakes. We may even fail, but to really risk love we will always make mistakes and have failure. We need to be mindful of our interdependence, to approach one another with authentic curiosity, and to be courageous in our love and make something that can make us as individuals and as progressive community of faith continue to consciously try to do and be better. Let's be people grounded in humility, fueled by love, and willing to say yes.